she began her prayer saying, why is it difficult for ordinary persons to understand the Supreme? Basically, it is the ego. And in order to melt that false ego, where do we start? Because just because we believe in Krishna does not mean false ego disappears overnight. So, where do we begin? How do we melt it? So, the process is Nama, Rupa, Guna, and Lila. That we begin our spiritual practice through the chanting of the holy names. And that is the first step in comprehending the incomprehensible Lord. Otherwise, the Supreme Lord will remain incomprehensible without chanting the holy names of the Lord. So, by chanting the holy names of the Lord and by engaging in processes like deity worship, gradually we develop appreciation for Krishna's form. And with the deepened realizations through chanting the holy names and taking darshan of the Lord, the form of the Lord becomes very etched in one's heart. And from there, one starts appreciating the qualities of Krishna. So, for a conditioned soul, Krishna's mercy is a very important quality. And from there, everything else of Krishna's qualities manifest. And then the qualities of Krishna's devotees also manifest, and their forms also manifest. So, with a combination of now knowing the name of the Lord, the form of the Lord, his qualities, and the qualities and the forms of his associates, Lila becomes manifest in one's heart. However, for all of these things to happen, again, we need to begin with the basics of chanting the holy names more than, and also knowing or developing gratitude for the Supreme Lord. Because the chronic disease of the conditioned soul is that due to false ego, we are ungrateful and we declare ourselves independent. Even a practicing devotee who knows that everything depends on Krishna acts as if nothing is dependent on Krishna because of that conditioning. And to get to overcome that conditioning is very important. Without developing dependence on the Lord, further advancement in spiritual life is difficult to achieve. So she discusses now how what stops us from recognizing God's mercy and his other qualities. Why is it difficult to accept the activities of the Lord? That the Lila, we all think of the Lila of the Lord is very sweet and we are eager to meditate. However, we also need to understand that the Lord's activities are not very easy to understand and accept. And why is it so difficult? Why his activities seem very difficult to understand, especially in this world when we suffer. It becomes very hard to understand why am I suffering. And unless we accept that everything has got Krishna's mercy, it would be very difficult to understand his activities, why he is doing what he is doing. After that, she also addressed in the last section, like the reasons for Krishna's appearance in this world. Why is he even coming to this world? And there were many reasons. However, we discussed that Krishna is primarily coming for us, you and me, in order for us to actually engage in devotional service so that we could actually develop a loving devotion and towards him and become eligible to see his lotus feet. That is one of the main reasons. And the byproduct is liberation or severing the bondage of material suffering. That's just a byproduct. And the real reason that Krishna comes is to actually awaken love for him in our hearts. And that's the main reason. So this week we're starting from verse 37, and technically Kunti Maharani's prayers ends with verse 43. So we have around 6 verses in this last section. So we will go with it. And forgive me because the content of the verses are very high. You can imagine it's the conclusion of her prayers. She speaks about subject matters which I have very little idea of based on Prabhupada's purpose and the book I'm reading. and what I've heard from others. I will be sharing many things. So it's not that I'm saying because I'm saying for others, I'm also saying for myself. So, yes, these verses do touch upon topics like surrender, which is where no, I don't have the complete realization. So forgive me if there is anything which I say, which probably will be, I'll be saying a lot of things beyond my adhikar, but in the mood of trying to understand the words of. So this is verse 37. Apyadyanastvam swakrite hita prabho jihasasisvat suhrudo anujivina yesham na chanyad bhavata padam bhujat parayanam rajasuyojitam hasam. Translation: O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Or are you leaving us today, though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us? Now, when all kings are at enmity with us. And the Prabhupada's purport, before we touch upon, I just wanted to give an introduction that now that she has discussed all the various, offered various prayers glorifying Krishna, now she is basically coming to express now that Krishna is actually leaving. The point at which Kunti Maharani catches Krishna and offering all these prayers is that Krishna had just saved Parikshit Maharaj from the Brahmastra of Ashwatthama. And immediately after that, he was about to leave to Dwarka, and he just saved Parikshit Maharaj because of Uttara's prayers. And after that, he consoled them and he was immediately leaving. And having experienced the protection of Krishna firsthand, not just Krishna's protection, the inability of the Pandavas to protect themselves and their dependents. That's what she has just experienced. That how helpless, or to the extent of saying useless, that's what she says, that the Pandavas were in protecting themselves and their dependents. So she has just experienced that, and now she is praying to Krishna that are you just leaving us, that we are still dependent on you. And basically, Prabhupada touches upon this concept of dependence on the Supreme Lord, because we were speaking about Nama, Rupa, Guna, and Lila. So through that sadhana, we realize more and more the personal nature of the Lord and his role in our lives. So as we develop spiritual vision, we also begin to see how deeply divided our consciousness is, how deeply we are attached materially, and how many desires we have that is separate from Krishna. So it is part of the process. The more we see Krishna's role in our lives, the more we realize Krishna's merciful nature, we also start realizing how much we fall short. It is not a problem, because not acknowledging it is also false ego. To a devotee, before becoming completely pure, even at the stage of becoming fully pure, the devotee continues to see that they are fallen. Someone like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami writes prayers like that I wouldn't dare say in public. So he says like, I am lower than a worm in the stool. Like, who says that? So it is coming from a very deep place. It's not coming from a psychological problem or anything. So the more one actually advances and develops spiritual vision, it's not that we see only Krishna. We see Krishna's greatness and we also start seeing our smallness. And our desire to enjoy ourselves independent of Krishna has thrust us into this material world. The very reason we are in this material world is because we have tried to enjoy ourselves independent of Krishna. So this desire for autonomy is called as ahankar. And that ahankar is the root, is deeply rooted in our consciousness, and it gives rise to fear. So driven by fear, We constantly think about future threats or problems or dangers that could come. We constantly worry about it. Or the past losses that we have incurred, we lament about it. Or the past achievements that we had, we feel proud about it. And we are also aware of the current emptiness in our hearts. Despite having all, we think, oh, I have achieved this or I have lost it in the past. That lamentation combined with the fear of the future and the stark reality of the emptiness of the heart currently, we just cannot handle that combination. So that when we think, I have to somehow improve the external circumstances of my existence, so the soul becomes completely busy in trying to actually create an independent existence in the material world, to overcome the lamentation of the past, the fear of the future, and the emptiness of the current state of heart. We come like we become too, we try to make ourselves very busy and in becoming independent, because the reality is very disturbing. We want to make ourselves busy and we become completely absorbed externally. So sooner or later, it becomes very clear to us that we cannot serve two masters, because we also want to be devotees and we are also trying to be independent of Krishna in our attempts to satisfy our false ego. So we cannot have two masters. We can either have Krishna or our ego. So at a certain spiritual stage of our spiritual life, we strive to actually come close to Krishna, but we also become painfully aware of our attachment to matter. It becomes extremely evident. I really want to be a devotee and I want to develop attachment to Krishna. That is a very honest desire in the heart of the devotee. At the same time, I'm also deeply entrenched in my attachments to matter. So these two are facts and they both coexist in the heart. And a advancing devotee becomes aware of that. And that is the stage called as Anartha Nivritti. That we understand, I want Krishna and I have everything other than attachment to Krishna in my heart. So it is a very difficult junction in spiritual life. To persist along the spiritual path, gradually to sever and reduce one's ego, to gradually let go of false ego, and to develop one's dependence on Krishna gradually more and more. Give up being the controller and enjoyer in this material world. It's very hard. And somehow or other, many spiritual practitioners, when they hit this state of this junction in their spiritual life, they can become tired and they would want to return to the habitual and relatively safe sphere of just trying to be a controller and enjoyer, because it is very difficult to actually let go of the false ego and develop one's dependence on Krishna more and more. It is very painful to break away from the bonds of the false ego. To justify our weakness to ourselves and to the world, sometimes spiritual practitioners will start finding falls within the spiritual path, falls when the spiritual teachers, falls in the association, so that they can hide their failures of inability to rise above the false ego and to become more and more dependent on Krishna. It's very scary for a practicing devotee. So then they will start finding faults everywhere around so that they can glare their inability. Or on the other hand, people can also hide behind being a very strict practitioner, very strict adherence to rituals, externals. They can hide behind either finding faults with everything around them in the spiritual path, or they can hide behind achievements or intense endeavors to actually either adhere to rituals externally very strictly, the externals of the sadhana, or the achievements within a particular association. Because every association, every organization, every congregation comes with a measure of success. A temple in which book distribution is emphasized, if you are a book distributor, you are the most successful devotee. If you are coming from a youth preaching temple, the more youth preaching you do, you are the most successful devotee. Sometimes the temple has fundraising as their mode. So the more funds you collect, the more advanced or a accomplished devotee you are. So each organization, each association, and a congregation comes with a certain measure of success externally. And people sometimes, because the internal work is too hard, they may use the external measures as an alternate. There is nothing wrong in collecting funds, preaching, and making temples, and bringing people to Krishna's lotus feet. That is not the point. I'm not saying we should not do that, but using those things as an alternate to achieving internal dependence on Krishna. Recently, one Prabhupada disciple told me, I've been thinking about it every now and then. She said, we in the early days were completely dependent on Krishna for everything in terms of paying bills and making the temples run and meeting our ends meet. And today ISKCON has very organized fundraising, very refined presentation. But she said, somewhere I find that the new devotees have lost their dependence on Krishna. They think their skills and their abilities, they will be able to actually move the organization further and spread spiritual consciousness. She said they themselves acutely lack dependence on Krishna's mercy. So there is nothing wrong in externally becoming very organized and efficient. However, when we think it is when we still don't have that complete dependence on Krishna internally, she said Krishna magic will not manifest. She said we experienced Krishna magic because Prabhupada's mood was full dependence, and somehow it was with us to some extent. So we experienced a lot of magics. And she said, without that dependence, the Krishna magic will not be experienced by that devotee in their personal lives. The organization will grow, but individual devotees may not experience that Krishna magic and transform. She's not saying blanket, nobody has it, but she was just making an observation that how predominantly we have become very dependent on external sources of growth than just also depending on Krishna. So here, Mother Kunti is saying that how that dependence of Krishna is lacking in a conditioned soul. So her focus in this prayer is Sharanagati, which is surrender. The impulse to surrender to the Lord is triggered by the understanding that no one else can rescue us from the cycle of birth and death, and no one else can protect us from our internal enemies. There is external suffering, and there is internal enemies in the form of lust, greed, anger, illusion, pride, and anger. All of these things, that those internal enemies, the attack from them and the external sufferings of the material world, nobody else can actually protect us. And Jiva Goswami says, the more one actually realizes this, the more, because we are tied down in this world by these powerful and gross material emotions like lust, anger, and everything. So this bondage is impossible to sever by our own intelligence. So to break it, we need the Lord's help. So it is not a mechanical sadhana will rises above these lust and anger and pride. We need to petition the Lord by with emotion, with dependence. So that is, he terms that as Sharanagati. Sanukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam rakshishyati iti vishvasho goptrutve varanam tata atma nikshepa karpanya shadvida sharanagati. So we take a vow to accept things which are favorable and to give up or reject things that are unfavorable. So that is a determined vow. And we develop and a devotee who's surrendered develops an expression of trust that Krishna is my protector, and also develops dependence that Krishna will provide for me, will take care of me. And also there is humility, that karpanya, that I am actually insignificant and rather destitute. And also there is Atma Nivedan, that is offering myself for the pleasure of Krishna. All of these things together form surrender. And here in this prayers, from 37 to 40 specifically, she expresses heartfelt sentiments of Goptrutve Varanam Tata, that Krishna is my maintainer. I am dependent on Krishna for my maintenance. Nobody else can actually protect me, nor my sons, nor their kingdoms. Nothing can actually protect me. It is only Krishna is my ultimate protector. That is a feeling and the emotion that she is going to express from verses 37 till 40, 37, 38, 39, and 40. So here in this verse, with this background, that of mood of Kunti Maharani, that how she is focused on this theme of dependence on Krishna. Because a conditioned soul, uh, some or other, has the tendency to feel independent of Krishna. And Prabhupada picks on that theme and very beautifully elaborates it. So we are going to read the purport and then add things to along the way while reading the purport. The translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhayacharana Arvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today, though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us, now when all the kings are at enmity with us? Purport: the Pandavas are most fortunate because, with all good luck, they were entirely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Just this first line is so beautiful. Why are they most fortunate? Not because they had all good luck. I was giving a class yesterday. I asked someone, how have you experienced Krishna's greatness in your life? So the question was this, and different devotees were answering. And one Mataji said, all the good things that happen in my life. Through that, I experienced Krishna's greatness. I asked her, what about the bad things that happen in your life? And because we assume that only I believe in Krishna, so only good things happen to me, or good things are only is the form of mercy. However, here Pandavas, and in that there is a problem with just good things happening to us also. Because the more good things happen to us, eventually we start forgetting that these things are happening because of Krishna's mercy. We start thinking somewhere in the corner of our hearts, I'm so great. That is why all these good things are happening. So here, Pandavas, despite having all good luck, they have crossed through an immense amount of challenges to now winning the war and becoming the kings of the whole kingdom. So they have all the good luck, but why are they most fortunate? Not because they have good luck, or they were not like in the past, they were not less fortunate because they had bad luck and went through so much suffering. They are most fortunate because they are entirely dependent on the Lord. Especially even with all good luck, it's much more difficult. In bad luck, actually, people very easily can depend on Krishna. Please save me. I don't have power come out of this. In good luck, nobody goes and prays to Krishna like that. Krishna, please save me. I'm having so much good luck. I don't know how to handle this. Without your mercy, I won't be able to handle this. Nobody does that. At least not normal, practicing devotees or like normal people. However, Pandavas are so great that despite having all good luck, they were completely, entirely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. And Prabhupada says in the material world, to be dependent on the mercy of someone else is the utmost sign of misfortune. I remember there was some instance where I told my father to stay, uh, to stay with my extended family so that he can be cared for. He said it's better to die than being dependent on other people. I understand that how painful it is to become actually dependent on other people. And Prabhupada is saying here that being dependent on the mercy of someone else is the utmost misfortune in this world. I had a sister who got paralyzed on one side of her body. She was quite young and she was just married and had a small kid. And she got paralyzed on one side of the body. And the pain that she went through of being dependent for everything on someone was heartbreaking. So these are considered as intense misfortune in this world, that becoming completely dependent on mercy of someone else. But in the case of transcendental relation with the Lord, it is the most fortunate case when we can live completely dependent on Him. In spiritual life, it is the completely opposite case. Like I was recently hearing, I'm means my spiritual master is His Holiness Radhanath Swami, so I know more about him. So, in that vein, I'm saying this, that recently I was told that he was making his morning smoothie, and there were devotees to help him clear the apartment, get his luggage out or something. So they rang the bell, and he said, "Please come in." And then he was making the smoothie for himself in the morning, so he poured out for the devotees also who just came to grab the luggage and help him. He said, "Please have some smoothie." So he himself poured in glasses and came and gave to them, and told them, "No, please sit and have the smoothie." And when they were drinking, he asked them, "How do you like it? Do you like the taste of it?" They said, "Yes, Maharaj, very nice." And he asked, "Is there anything that could be improved? Please let us know." And after that, he asked, "Actually, I could not eat in the mornings. I was unable to eat anything in the morning because I was becoming very tired and I was not able to function. So I was praying to Krishna, please, I don't know how to, means I need the energy to function, at the same time I cannot eat. So how do I do this?" So he was praying to Krishna, and one day in the dream he saw that he was making a smoothie. And after that he woke up and he remembered all the ingredients, and then he wrote down that, and from that time he started making that smoothie, and he said he feels much fresh in the mornings having that smoothie. And then he said he fed that ingredient list to AI to ask if this combination is nice. He said whoever came up with this is brilliant, the AI said. He was like joking at it, because of course, I was just like, what was very touching to me was, to make it into a prayer to Krishna. It sounds very simplistic, that I come from such a like an independent attitude. I'm like, why the hell I would ask Krishna for my smoothie? Like, I will do a Google search. I would ask a doctor. I will ask a nutrition expert or a dietitian. I wouldn't ask Krishna. Like, I would consider that as very sentimental, personally, in my, what do you call, like my psychophysical makeup. I'm like, oh, that's so sentimental. Who prays to Krishna to give a smoothie recipe? However, when, like, as I'm trying to grow in bhakti, I'm realizing sentiments on, because I had this idea growing up, sentimental people are stupid, and devotees should not be too sentimental. However, now what helps us to grow in bhakti has to be sometimes given up to go further in bhakti. So I'm realizing that how that attitude has fueled my independent attitude a lot, of not wanting to be sentimental, has gone to the other extreme of just being like, in seeing everything as sentiment, and even seeing dependence on Krishna as a sentiment. So now I have to retrain myself. No, bring everything to Krishna and depend on Krishna. It's such a difficult attitude or a quality to develop. So what I was appreciating was that he was just praying that, please, what should I eat? And it sounds like got any sense, like you see in these days in YouTube and everything, they have these laddu gopals and they're doing all this drama, which just feels like, so like I just cannot stand those kind of things personally. And to see this is very heartwarming, because here there is a attitude of service. I want to serve you better, and I don't have anyone else to go to help, ask help for. So this is a different level of sentiment. This is a pure sentiment of feeling dependent on Krishna in everything, not in the mood of so see how I'm great or anything. Rather in a mood of I want to serve better, and I don't know, and this would be very important for me to be able to serve you better. So please help me navigate this. So that dependence, complete dependence, is a sign of surrender. So the material disease is due to thinking of becoming independent of everything. Especially scientific advancement has subtly given that in our heads, like has put it in our heads. And that's what Prabhupada is going to nail next. So, but the cruel material nature does not allow us to become independent. The false attempt to become independent of the stringent laws of nature is known as material advancement of experimental knowledge. The whole material world is moving on this false attempt of becoming independent of the laws of nature. And Prabhupada gives an example. He compares the modern world with Ravana. Beginning from Ravana, who wanted to prepare a direct staircase to the planets of heaven, down to the present age, they are trying to overcome the laws of nature. They're trying now to approach distant planetary systems by electronic mechanical power. But the highest goal of human civilization is to work hard. And usually people think, if I am dependent on Krishna, that means it's laziness. Or because I'm dependent on Krishna, I don't need to do externally anything to fix the situation or remedy the situation or to improve the situation. So these are two extremes, that either I do everything as if things just nobody exists, I'm controlling everything. That is the attitude of the scientist. On the other hand, those there are other sentimental people who would say, I'm just dependent on Krishna, so they won't do anything about practically what they are supposed to play their role, play their part. They would just think, oh, everything is Krishna's mercy, so I'll just sleep. So these two extremes Prabhupada is trying to address. First, he has addressed the independent attitude. Now he is addressing the sentimentally dependent attitude. The highest goal of human civilization is to work hard under the guidance of the Lord and become completely dependent on Him. So this is the combination that Prabhupada wants the devotees to develop. That how that one is completely dependent. Externally, we work tirelessly, and internally depend on the Lord completely. And Prabhupada says, the highest achievement of perfect civilization is to work with valor, but at the same time depend completely on the Lord. The Pandavas were the ideal executors of this standard of civilization. Undoubtedly, they were completely dependent on the goodwill of Lord Sri Krishna, but they were not ideal parasites of the Lord. They were all highly qualified both by personal character and by physical activities. Still, they always looked for the mercy of the Lord, because they knew that every living being is dependent by constitutional position. The perfection of life is therefore to become dependent on the will of the Lord instead of becoming falsely independent in the material world. So, the notion of independence is faulty, and that's what Prabhupada is pointing out here, because nobody is independent in this world. There's nothing we can do just on our own. Right from water to sunlight, we are dependent on everything. So, acknowledging our dependence on God is an acknowledgement of reality, actually, the immediate daily living reality. However, we have become so intoxicated by material advancement and civilization, and we become accustomed to using facilities which constantly robs us of our awareness of dependence on the Lord. Many times, you go on a camping or like you go on a hike into the nature, immediately it becomes, you realize how small you are. From the ticks to the bears, it just everything makes you realize how insignificant I am, and uh, anytime anything could happen. So moment we walk into nature, we become actually helpless. Everything is bigger than us. There's huge trees, powerful waters and waterfalls and rivers and animals and insects and bugs and ticks. Immediately you feel like so helpless, and uh, immediately there is a sign. The fear is the immediate reaction. When we are helpless, there is fear as the immediate byproduct. However, in that life, people were also more God conscious in their own way. Even tribals were worshipping the nature because they understand it's not, they are not completely in control. But the modern civilization and the gadgets that we have developed and we are using it daily has given us this subtle sense of independence. So it stops us from acknowledging our dependence on Krishna. When waters come in tap, we don't feel very grateful. But when you have to actually take it out from a well and you're dependent on the rain to actually fill the well according to the season, then you become acutely aware that how much you're dependent on the nature, how much we are dependent on God. Sorry, my screen has gone. Those who try to become falsely independent of the Lord are called anatha, or without any guardian, whereas those who are completely dependent on the will of the Lord are called sanatha, or those having someone to protect them. Therefore, we must try to be sanatha so that we can always be protected from the unfavorable condition of material existence. By the deluding power of the external material nature, we forget that the material condition of life is the most undesirable perplexity. Prabhupada painful, like words can be painful in that it shows torch at the place exactly where there is a disease in the consciousness. That he says, by the deluding power of the external material nature, we forget that the material condition of life is the most undesirable perplexity. So at least I don't live my life as if it is a most undesirable perplexity, because consciousness is deluded by the material nature. So Prabhupada continues, the Bhagavad Gita therefore directs us 7.19 that after many, many births, one fortunate person becomes aware of the fact that Vasudev is all in all, and that the best way of leading one's life is to surrender unto him completely. That is a sign of Mahatma. All the members of the Pandava family were Mahatmas in household life. Maharaj Yudhishthir was the head of these Mahatmas, and Queen Kunti Devi was the mother. The lessons of the Bhagavad Gita and all the Puranas, specifically the Bhagavata Purana, are therefore inevitably connected with the history of the Pandava Mahatmas. For them, separation from the Lord was just like the separation of a fish from water. Srimati Kunti Devi therefore felt such separation like a thunderbolt, and the whole prayer of the queen is to try to persuade the Lord to stay with them. After the battle of Kurukshetra, although the inimical kings were killed, their sons and grandsons were still there to deal with the Pandavas. So someone may say, is it not very materialistic to ask Krishna, just stay here because we have so many enemies? And Prabhupada takes it to another level, how to see this consciousness of Kunti Devi, where is she coming from? And because we may think, oh, it's so mundane, Prabhupada is saying, oh, no, it is not only the Pandavas who were put in the condition of enmity, but all of us are always in such a condition. And the best way of living is to become completely dependent on the will of the Lord and thereby overcome all difficulties of material existence. Because it is we think, oh, it is, it's only Kunti Devi who is in danger. Prabhupada says, no, in the material world, everyone is actually constantly surrounded by danger. So, without realizing that, we won't be able to fully appreciate the need for Krishna's shelter. And by realizing that, we become Sanata. We do constantly think, I have a master and I can turn to him for help. Otherwise, we live as anathas, orphans in this world, that we think I have to handle everything in my life. There is nobody else to actually turn to. So we may externally practice sadhana, but internally may not take shelter of Krishna in our lives. So then we also, though we have a master, we act as if we don't have any shelter. So this theme of developing dependence on Krishna is what is touched upon here, because that is also in the Sanskrit is called as Ananya Gatitva, exceptional dependence on the Lord, because that needs absolute trust in Him. And only with that kind of complete dependence can we actually gain inner completeness. We don't feel internally connected because we don't seek shelter of Krishna internally, sincerely and seriously. We feel empty despite following sadhana, despite practicing a life of devotion in all the external ways that we are trying to tick the boxes and match the requirement. We internally feel empty, fearful, bitter, confused, angry, because we have not trained our minds to internally really take shelter of Krishna. We still hold on to our false ego and try to practice bhakti from that platform. So, in order to feel internally complete and connected and overcome the emptiness, we need to develop actually dependence on Krishna. And that is why Jiva Goswami says, he calls it as tadiyatva. He says, an advanced devotee feels that they belong to Krishna. And of course, further advanced is to know, think that Krishna belongs to me. But that does not come before having this feeling that I belong to Krishna. To the extent we think I have to figure out everything on my own, we don't have that feeling that I belong to Krishna. The true feeling when I have that I belong to Krishna, then I also turn to Krishna for help and I remain dependent on Krishna. So, complete and unconditional surrender to the will of the Lord is the only way to achieve complete perfection, but it is very high requirement. However, this is what Prabhupada is inspiring us for and ready to offer. That he writes, the perfection of life is therefore to become dependent on the will of the Lord instead of becoming falsely independent in the material world. We have to be careful how are all the material facilities and all the achievements and we have all the identities we have does not make us feel falsely independent in the material world. Rather, some or other we grow more and more dependent on the will of the Lord. And the environment in this world atmosphere is charged with enmity and competition. In general, in this world, everyone envies other person. So consciously or unconsciously, people strive for power, fame, fortune, titles, respect, validation, security. So in a simple way, everyone seeks supremacy. We all compete with the Supreme Lord. So that's why constantly there is an one-upmanship in this world, that everyone wants to outdo someone else. So these problems of the world never ends. And even when we start this walking the spiritual path, these things don't change. Sometimes we even face a greater hostility now because the world does not see us as on their side. So they think we are very different. And sometimes due to our false ego, we have these same qualities we bring into the devotional association also and keep fighting. So we have a double-edged sword then. One side, the world sees us as different and does not see us as very integrated with them. So it sometimes is very hostile. On the other hand, if we bring ego into the association of devotees, then we also create a similar situation within the association. So then both ways we will feel that means where did I end up? What is this? What is going on here? So to overcome the external fears, of the fear of external dangers and the fear of internal enemies, we have to actually surrender to Krishna and become more and more dependent on Him. The more we realize how we are helpless in the face of the external dangers and the internal enemies, there is no other option than depending on Krishna and surrendering to Him is left for a conditioned soul. The more we realize, the sooner and the more stronger our surrender would be. That the more we realize the external dangers of living in this world in an independent way, and the internal enemies that makes us constantly feel independent from Krishna and enjoy independent from Krishna, the more we realize that, we'll we will be forced to depend on Krishna. And the verse 38, she continues that what does that dependence mean for her? What does she want by making Krishna stay with them? What is she asking for? Kevayam nama rupabhyam yadubi saha pandava bhavato darshanam yarhi bhavato adarshanam yarhi rishikanami veshitu. So Krishna might object for Kunti's request to stay back and not leave them, especially at a time of where all the other surrounding kings and people are at enmity with them. Krishna can object, saying, "No, you're not defenseless or surrounded by enemies. We have such a powerful, heroic sons like Arjuna, who's very skillful, Bhima, who's very powerful, Yudhishthira, who's very dharmic. So they are mighty and unmatched, actually." He says, Yudhishthira is the embodiment of Dharma. And what more, Yadavas are your powerful allies. So what are you afraid of? Why are you asking me to wait here? You have such people to protect you, and you have Yadavas as the allies. So why would you fear? There's no reason for you to fear. And anticipating that Krishna might object like this, Kunti is saying, no, without you, all our strength will diminish. We just saw with all their strength, they could not protect themselves and the child in the womb of Uttara. Without you, all our strength will diminish. The eyes, ears, and the nose. They can hear, smell because the soul is living within the body. The moment the soul leaves, all the senses are useless. So similarly, if without you, none of our strengths and abilities has any meaning. And Prabhupada uses a very interesting translation, Bhavataha Adarshanam. So Bhavataha Adarshanam literally can mean that if we are not able to see you, that could be one of the ways naturally it is translated, because Kunti Devi is saying this. Bhavato Adarshanam. That if we cannot see your form, your darshan, what will happen to us? But Prabhupada answers this, that if you do not look upon us, all our strength will come to an end. If you do not look upon us. So darshan is usually, we think we go and see the deities, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has this sentiment, which is an advanced state of consciousness, excuse me, that how the Lord is supposed to see us. And in that consciousness, Prabhupada is writing that how if you do not look upon us, that Krishna's glance is what is required upon us. Because why? Because Krishna's glance is that glance which brought the whole material existence to life. Sa aikshata lokanusraja. By the glance of the Supreme Lord, the whole material creation was created. And so life comes when Krishna's vision is upon us. Krishna's kind eyes are upon us. When he looks upon us with affection, then there is life in us. That's why we go before the deities, so that we can develop life. What is life? Spiritual emotions is life. So the more and more I feel I am independent of Krishna, that attitude is killing me internally. But when I go before the deities and fold my hands and realize that, oh, I'm actually dependent on Krishna, and to offer our prayers and to acknowledge, Krishna, I live life as if I am independent. This is my disease. Please let me develop attachment to you, dependence on you. That is what is giving life to the heart. The spiritual emotions is giving the life to the heart and to one's bhakti. So that is why it is important to take darshan of the deities, that so that we can actually infuse life into our devotion. We don't go because if Krishna sees me, everything will be auspicious in my life. It will be auspicious, but may not be externally the way we assume what is auspicious. So without, and that's why Prabhupada is including this rich translation, that how without Krishna's glance, there would be no fortune, and all the name, fame, reputation, and glory that people experience. Nama Rupa Abhyam. So Nama is representing all the reputation and the glory, and Rupa is representing all the beauty, strength, might, power, and wealth. So all of these things without Krishna's glance is all like good as death. Hirshi Kana Miveshituhu. So as long as we are alive, we possess some glory, beauty, or strength, power, wealth, all of these things. But as soon as the body leaves, everything disappears in an instant. It's all an empty shell that is left. So Arjuna also expressed this same emptiness in a previous chapter. And okay, no, it's still yet to come in the 15th chapter. There may be so many brilliant people in this world who have so many skills without acknowledging their dependence on Krishna. So one may think, oh, does their existence refute this thesis that without Krishna's glance you cannot have any good things? No, with all that they have, the talents and the abilities of the individuals who are actually antagonistic to Krishna's service, it becomes a curse. So they just become overwhelmed by their own achievements, and it becomes a curse eventually. So anyone who appropriates God's energy is always punished. Like Ravana abducted Sita Devi. Similarly, anyone who takes up the energies of the Supreme Lord and tries to make it their own in an independent way, they will be killed, in the sense internally also. Because people think, and especially in the modern world of social media, success in life is determined by how many people knows about our existence, how many people are interested in us, and how many people acknowledge our existence. That's what is most important. People should know where I eat, where I sleep, what I do. So in order to draw attention to our achievements and merits, people are very eager. There is like never ending effort to please others, and we will end up losing ourselves in that mindless pursuit of trying to please others. So material life means it's trying to please people and attract their favorable glances. That is all it is. Attracting attention and glance from people. That is all social media is. So here Kunti Devi is saying, what is the use of that? We want your glance. So spiritual life begins the moment we realize that the Lord's glance has actually awakened us, has given life, and only under his gaze can we actually flourish spiritually and understand the purpose and meaning in life. So only when we actually start serving the Lord, and then we also associate with his pure devotees, that's when we really understand how to desire not to flatter but to serve. Because it is very hard for a conditioned soul. So only when we start associating with a pure devotee, we can start suddenly understanding that we feel like we are a spirit soul and not a mortal body. Just the eyes of a pure devotee, and so while serving to them, can make us realize how we are beyond this body and we are a spirit soul. Associating them, we will feel suddenly there is someone who does not judge me, and they just are giving their mercy. And we desire not to flatter but to serve in that association. So the love of pure devotees, saintly people, drives the fear out of our hearts, because we constantly fear, because we don't have faith that anyone loves me in this world unconditionally. So when we actually serve a pure devotee and experience their love and affection, we naturally feel so uplifted. We feel there is no fear in the heart, because for the first time or for the rare occasions that we experience, that we finally feel that someone actually loves me unconditionally for who I am as the spirit soul, not seeing me and judging me through my externals. In serving great souls, actually, we realize that we can stop being slaves to lust and anger. We start seeing those things as extraneous. We start seeing those things as unnecessary. and how we could actually come to the stage of soul and live from there and practice bhakti. And we feel material life is useless and bhakti is the most important thing. What am I doing? Why am I not just putting my energy there? So we develop that intense eagerness in their association and service. So what we need is the glance of the Supreme Lord and his pure devotees, not for validation, not for to again make us feel that we are someone who's great. So we don't want again use them as an instruments of our validation. The same way we use the social media and others in our lives, we use people. Please acknowledge my presence. Please glorify my skills and abilities. So we use people to actually feel something, but we don't want to do that with the Supreme Lord and the pure devotees. So otherwise, that would become an offense. So basically, we want to feel internally very deeply that Krishna, who am I? What am I actually without you? This world may have actually made me feel so independent, but I don't belong here. Actually, I belong to you. So please forgive me for still clinging to my independence. Take it away. Make me completely dependent on you. So your gaze, your attention, your vision on me is what is going to give me life. So please have your merciful glance upon me. That is what is most important. So that requires gratitude. That requires for us to understand that how small we are. So Kunti Devi is quite aware that the existence of the Pandavas is due to Krishna only. The Pandavas are undoubtedly well established in name and fame and are guided by the great King Yudhishthir, who is morality personified, and the Yadus are undoubtedly the great allies. But without the guidance of Lord Krishna, all of them are non entities. As much as the senses of the body are useless without the guidance of consciousness. No one should be proud of his prestige, power, and fame without being guided by the favor of the Supreme Lord. The living being are always dependent, and the ultimate dependable object is the Lord Himself. We may therefore invent by our advancement of material knowledge all sorts of counteracting material resources, but without being guided by the Lord, all such inventions end in fiasco, however strong and stout the reactionary elements may be. नेयं शोभिष्यते तत्र यते दानीं गदाधर त्वत्पादैरङ्किता भाति स्वलक्षणा विलक्षितै. I know it's already 10 o'clock. I was assuming I'll complete this section today. So let's at least go until two more verses. I'm going to be quick. So there are certain translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhacharna Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O Gadadhara, our kingdom is now being marked by the impressions of your feet, and therefore it appears beautiful. But when you leave, it will no longer so be. There are certain particular marks on the feet of the Lord which distinguish the Lord from others. The marks of a flag, thunderbolt, an instrument to drive an elephant, which is goat, umbrella, lotus disc, etc., are on the bottom of the Lord's feet. These marks are impressed upon the soft dust of the land where the Lord traverses. The land of Hastinapur was thus marked with Lord Sri Krishna was there with the Pandavas, and the kingdom of the Pandavas was thus flourished by such auspicious signs. Kunti Devi pointed out these distinguished features and was afraid of ill luck in the absence of the Lord. It is again a very detailed topic. People think material prosperity does not go hand in hand with spiritual advancement. So, what does not go is in the commentary, I remember Bali Maharaj's pastime, the wealth of Bali Maharaj that he received afterwards is not considered as material because Krishna took away what he had, that is the ego. And then whatever Bali Maharaj had was given by Krishna. So that wealth is not considered material at all. So Prabhupada said, Krishna tested me in two ways. He took away everything I had and I was dependent on him. And he gave everything and still I was dependent on him. He said it is very difficult. Because imagine the wealth that Prabhupada had, even materially speaking. In some places, in some lectures, Prabhupada would be saying, he would be meeting Indian businessmen and he would be saying, we are actually making like, we are collecting funds in the amounts of thousands per day all over the world. He would say, this much money that we are, my organization is collecting. And I'm like, being a very introvert, I would just feel, Prabhupada, why are you saying these things to these business people? It just sounds like so boastful. And it took a while to understand that he is seeing it as being given by Krishna. So he has no qualms about accepting, yes, I have so much wealth. Because people think if you just worship Krishna, you'll become a pauper. You will just suffer, because all these famous verses are there that Krishna says, if I actually have my merciful glance upon my devotee, to bring him close, I take away everything. That's only one part of it. Whatever Prabhupada had, he took it away. But did he not give it later? He took away everything Bali Maharaj had. Did he not give it later? So there is always prosperity among which just surrounds the pure devotees. It may not be in a way that we want to see. It could be different for different devotees externally. However, that material prosperity does not necessarily actually impede spiritual development if the devotee is that much spiritually advanced. So, through our surrender to Krishna, whatever we have earned is not material, be it external wealth or anything. When it is given by Krishna because of one's surrender, that wealth is considered spiritual. So here, whatever they have received is that auspiciousness is not material. Kunti Maharani is not concerned about keeping her kingdom more fertile and more auspicious, and trying to protect our kingdom, her sons and the kingdom and herself from external danger. She is not approaching that from a materialistic perspective, because it could be misunderstood by reading these verses. After speaking all these big things, she is just asking for protection of kingdom, protection of herself, protection of her sons, and auspiciousness in the kingdom. It just sounds so material. The attitude is that one of dependence. She sees all these things are given by Krishna, so she's not seeing them as material wealth. So that is why here Prabhupada is also saying Krishna's lotus feet has touched that kingdom, and because of that, there was all auspicious signs. And now she's saying, oh, if you go away, all these auspiciousness will go away. Not because he is attached to auspiciousness, she is attached to having Krishna's lotus feet. All these cities, villages are flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance, the trees are full of fruits, the rivers are flowing, the hills are full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to your glancing over them. So she's again speaking about Krishna's glance. And Prabhupada's rips modern advancement in this purport. Human prosperity flourishes by natural gifts and not by gigantic industrial enterprises. The gigantic industrial enterprises are products of a godless civilization, and they cause the destruction of the noble aims of human life. The more we go on increasing such troublesome industries to squeeze out the vital energy of the human being, the more there will be unrest and dissatisfaction of the people in general, although few only can live lavishly by exploitation. Believe me, after 50 years or 60 years of writing these words, Prabhupada, that he wrote it in the 1960s, today it is 100% true. And we see more and more unrest, more and more dissatisfaction, and a handful of people living lavishly by exploiting the rest of the population. The natural gifts such as grains and vegetables, rivers, fruits, the hills of jewels and minerals, and the seas are full of pearls are supplied by the order of the Supreme. And as he desires, the material nature produces them in abundance or restricts them at times. The natural law is that the human being may take advantage of these godly gifts by nature and satisfactorily flourish on them without being captivated by the exploitative motive of lording it over material nature. The more we attempt to exploit material nature according to our whims of enjoyment, the more we shall become entrapped by the reaction of such exploitative attempts. There is landslides everywhere, there is floods everywhere, there is glaciers melting everywhere, there are cloud bursts, flash floods, all these tornadoes, all these things, especially because of too much intervention with the material nature. If we have sufficient grains, fruits, vegetables, and herbs, then what is the necessity of running a slaughterhouse and killing poor animals? The man need not kill an animal if he has sufficient grains and vegetables to eat. The flow of river waters fertilizes the fields, and more than there is more than what we need. Minerals are produced in the hills and the jewels in the ocean. If the human civilization has sufficient grains, minerals, jewels, water, milk, etc., then why should it hanker after terrible industrial enterprises at the cost of the labor of some unfortunate men? But all these natural gifts are dependent on the mercy of the Lord. What we need, therefore, is to be obedient to the laws of the Lord and achieve perfection of human life by devotional service. The indications of Kunti Devi are just to the point. She desires that God's mercy be bestowed upon them so that natural prosperity may be maintained by His grace. So, the material world has become a dungeon of demons who, in the name of like material advancement, technological advancement, making it making the whole world completely hard to live by. And in the name of creating more facilities, they make people like mm, chronically stressed and anxious. And even the general acts of keeping up one's home and working hard to make food and all these things have a psychological effect. People will feel much more happy if they actually are busy taking care of themselves and extending themselves to take care of others. However, the notion of being so independent and relaxed, then the same people then sit around and feel very empty, and because they have not reciprocated love, so they feel very empty, disconnected, and depressed despite having all the facilities. The home is filled with appliances and the heart is feeling empty. And that's what the modern civilization has driven us to. And that's what Prabhupada is throwing us light on it. So there are two more verses to complete this section. There is, no, three more verses, 41, 42, and 43. We will take that in the coming week. And I'll also summarize this whole section next week. I'll have much more time and preparation also. So thank you. And extremely grateful to Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj for his book and and to Prabhupada for his amazing purpose that I could sound wise despite not knowing much. So thank you, and grateful to all of you for your time and attention. Purva, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Well, we've reached the end of the prayers, but I still haven't understood why does Kunti Devi ask Krishna to stay back physically? Because he helped Draupadi even though he wasn't there physically, isn't it? It was all because she surrendered to him completely. And Kunti Devi knows about this. She knows that as long as they are completely dependent upon Krishna in all kinds of circumstances, not just when there are troubles, but even in happy circumstances, he will always guide them. So, why does she insist again and again for him to stay back?
You live away from your parents in Paris. So, like, and you were recently at home. So, assuming that you love your parents and your parents love you very much, you have a life and you know they are there to protect you and take care of you. But would you not want to be in their personal presence and have that experience more personally and closely?
Yes, but well, we're talking about Krishna right now,
But
not
Krishna is, if Krishna could be with you all the time, so
but
why not be greedy for it? What's wrong in being greedy for Krishna's presence?
true, but she already knows that he is there with her. He's omnipotent and omnipresent 24/7. She knows that, yet she's asking for his physical
So
presence.
that is why she's asking, you are omnipotent, so just stay here and manage your things wherever you want to manage. You manage it, but stay with us. See,
Yes,
it is coming from a place of affection, not from a logic.
yes,
So if so, that is what that we are aspiring. That can I actually hanker for Krishna that much? That I just want to be in the presence of Krishna all the time. We are like, oh, okay, when there is problem, Krishna is there to protect me, and I'll manage my life independently. But a pure devotee always wants to be in the embrace of Krishna, and if it could be personally, why not?
yes. I get it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as Keshavmadha Prabhu was saying, yeah, the gopis and all the Brajvasis and Radharani, they were crying at the thought of Krishna leaving in some time, though he was sitting next to him. Because if we don't have the memory of having Krishna's personal association. Sometimes even people associate with their spiritual masters and teachers, and when they're leaving, you feel like, oh, that's all like for a few days, and then you're already leaving. So what to speak of someone who has actually experienced Krishna's personal presence? Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. Hope Purva is satisfied. Her hands went down.
Thank
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Mataji, Hare Krishna. Let me stop my screen. Hare Krishna, Manori Mataji, Hari Bol, Sundar Gopal Prabhu, Keshav Madhav Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Hemangi Mataji, Amal Gopi Mataji, Hare Krishna, Harshita, Sundaranand Prabhu, Neera Prabhu, Hari Bol, Ishwari Priya Mataji, Ishwari Radhika Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hari Bol, Manori Mataji. And Hari Bol. Thank you, Neera Prabhu, Hari Bol. Thank you all.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.